Hello, you wonderful people. So for today's video, I want to talk about the trailer that just dropped for Spider-Man Far From Home, which if you have not seen it already, I'll include a link to it in the description down below, but which I find so serendipitous because it drops literally the day after I've seen Endgame, especially because they start being like, yo, this trailer's gonna have spoilers for Endgame, so if you haven't seen Endgame, don't watch this. I love that. That's so cool. And it's almost kind of funny you have Tom Holland saying that too, considering the fact is there's the whole, joke about him being the one kind of ends up spoiling a lot of things. I just think that's kind of funny. This is me recording this like Monday. My video where I discuss my thoughts about Endgame probably isn't going to go up until Wednesday. This probably won't go up until Friday. That's kind of a lot of behind the scenes stuff that I'm sure you don't care about, but just know that ahead of time. So, holy crap. So it's really interesting because like my discussion of Endgame, I ended up bringing up some of this stuff of like, oh yeah, like that I knew that this movie would probably heavily deal with the fact is obviously Tony dies in Endgame, and that Peter looking up to him, that, Tony was like a father figure to him, that I knew that'd be a weight on his show. I love it because the original trailer, obviously not spoiling things, did not hold that tone at all. Like obviously for obvious reasons, but it's so interesting to see it kind of heavily because for him it's like everywhere he goes he sees Tony's face. He sees Iron Man everywhere, and it's just a reminder. Because let's not forget too, it's like his last big adventure, not just Endgame and Infinity War, but his own movie was heavily influenced with him spending time with Tony helping him become the hero that he needs to be, helping him rise to the occasion. And I think that added this weight to it. It's just like the beauty of this connected universe of being able to tell a story like this, that feel that emotional impact of like what it means for Peter to lose him, just like how important he was to him, especially because it's like he sacrificed himself to save the world too. I do like that he is still wearing the Iron Spider suit. Obviously it seems like he leaves that behind when he goes on vacation and stuff like that, so that's pretty neat. But obviously you've got Happy, being there too, being like, yeah, I miss him too. And now it's like, there's a whole conversation that comes up in it I think is kind of interesting of like, who's going to be the next Iron Man, which is, a big conversation of who's going to pick up that role. And it's like, the conversation is like, is Peter going to do that? Now that'd be interesting. I mean, he has the Iron Spider suit and everything, but will there be an occasion where he decides to armor up, or does he feel like that's a responsibility that's too big for him to carry? Once again, it's like, oh, I'm still like your neighborhood Spider-Man, which I love the whole conversation with Nick Fury, which for one, it's like, you don't push like, send Nick Fury to voicemail or whatever it was that Happy said exactly. I love that because it's like Happy's come across Nick enough to be like, no, you don't play with Nick Fury, you don't do that. But also it's like, I love Peter being like, why don't you literally call upon the dozens of heroes that literally I met when we fought Thanos and his army? It's like, where's Thor? Off-world. What about Captain Marvel? She's busy. It's like, dude, he's like, why is this up to me? I'm just a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Nick's like, what? Bitch, you went to space. You ain't no friendly neighborhood Spider-Man anymore. When the big stuff happens, you ready for this. And it's just so interesting because obviously, like you can tell, like obviously a lot of stuff went down in Endgame as the passing of the torch in many different regards. It's not something I exactly talked about, but obviously a lot of it is there, with like Sam becoming Captain America, obviously, like, and obviously even Thor passing down like the kingship to Valkyrie, which is something I didn't talk about either. I'm an idiot, I completely forgot about. But the fact is, like, I think we see Nick doing that because it's like, I'm preparing this next generation of heroes to carry on the torch that started with Iron Man, So, I mean, obviously, technically it started with Cap, if you want to be all chronological, but to be fair, that started with the Starks because of Howard and everything, so it kind of works out in that way of it still kind of starting with Tony in a certain extent. But nevertheless, obviously there's the big thing of like, holy crap, Mysterio isn't from our Earth, he's from a different Earth. It's like, yo, okay, so going forward, we're heavily tapping into this whole multiverse situation, which is a conversation of like, whatever went down in Endgame would lead to the multiverse, because obviously Doctor Strange introduced that, and once again, that could be the conversation of how you get, X-Men and Fantastic Four introduced, and it's heavily hints at that in that regard, so that's pretty dope. Because that's the whole conversation in itself of like, that way you don't have to necessarily mess with your universe. They kind of introduced him. It's like, no, it's already stacked there to be like, oh yeah, there's other universes, so add in other things, other different versions of characters, which obviously this is probably set up for like the different Spider-Mans. They might kind of do their own little Spider-Verse situation. I don't know if they would necessarily do that because obviously Marvel and Sony are connected and they already did Into the Spider-Verse, but we might see some hints to that potentially. maybe some winks and nods, but maybe not a full-blown doing that. It'd be pretty dope. I'd love to kind of, once again, I talked about it before, like an introduction to like Madam Web and stuff like that, because that was like one of my favorite arcs in like the cartoon from like the 90s. In fact, that was like the final arc of like the 90s cartoon. Now that adds an interesting element to this whole like Mysterio being a hero thing, because it's like, well, it's understandable. You're not the same, you know, Quentin Beck from this world who might be a criminal. Maybe he hasn't even gotten to that point yet. Maybe it would be a twisted situation of like, oh, he gets inspired by this Quentin Beck and he decides to become Mysterio and become a bad guy instead. Or maybe he is here on Earth, which is 616, but I don't know if they've officially established that yet. This might be the first movie they do establish that. But well, I don't know. Like, once again, that's the comic book continuity. I don't know if they would actually go through the same naming convention or not in the movies or not. But nevertheless, it'd be interesting to see if that ended up being the case. Maybe even a real Quentin Beck is already locked up by S.H.I.E.L.D. or whatever. Or maybe this is his birth. That he is, like, he was like maybe he was some loser, some has-been hero in his world, but things didn't work out. So he did come to this world to be a villain just so he could play the role of the hero. Maybe that's what that is. Maybe he's trying to make up for things and failures in his own world. It's like, oh, I have a new opportunity. Maybe that's the whole thing too of like, he saw this opportunity, like, there's another world. Wait, I'm just like some illusionist here, but I can make myself something greater in that world. Maybe it's not even that he was a failed hero. Maybe he never had an opportunity, or maybe, you know, he wanted to get a new start, a world he could be worshipped and loved. So maybe he is a villain in his world and now he's come over here. Who knows? Or maybe he's a straight up hero. It's definitely interesting. It's also interesting too because it's an interesting dynamic they're creating, because obviously like Peter's kind of going to another father figure, kind of another mentor with Mysterio. He's like, yo, probably like, I'm older, I've been through this. Obviously you lost another father figure. Here I am kind of playing that role, because Nick ain't really playing that role for Peter. Like, obviously, like, I'm sure that's going to be a line from Nick too, being like, I ain't your daddy type of situation. So that might be the type of thing we see. But then like that probably causes issue because like obviously, you know, he's so quick to kind of like have, you know, kind of have someone else in his life like that, that maybe that betrayal from Mysterio won't be what he sees coming. That's where my mindset is on it. Because another thing that has to be considered too is like, and it's something I brought up during Endgame, we're going forward in a time skip, which is pretty dope. I love when stuff like that happens, because once again, it's been 5 years because of Endgame, and like the world's kind of moved on, except for the people who got snapped in Infinity War, because now it's like, oh, we're back in this world that's already 5 years older. Like, a lot of time has changed. So I'm curious to see like them dabble with that in any shape or form. So that's gonna be pretty dope. And then obviously there was a big element of like, oh, him and Mary Jane, and obviously this movie is hinting to like, oh, there's gonna be more. And I love him be like, I gotta tell you something. She's like, you're Spider-Man. He's like, what? No. And she's like, it's actually pretty obvious, which is so dope, because obviously in some continuity she does find out about him being Spider-Man. Well, whether it's kind of, you know, later on. Did I expect her to find out this soon? Not really. Well, it's actually kind of interesting. We actually break everything down, because like in the original Spider-Man trilogy with Sam Raimi, she actually found out. She kind of figured it out at the end of one. And I'm wondering, is that same thing going to happen in this one? Because it seemed like, obviously, because I wonder, has she known the entire time? Because once again, I always go back to that scene at the end of Homecoming where she's kind of like, wait, Peter, what are you hiding? And she's like, actually, where are you going? Where are you hiding? She's like, oh, I'm just kidding. I don't care. Like, but then you see that look on her face, like she does care, like she is concerned. So part of me wonders, is that her having already figured out, like, oh, you're Spider-Man just because of all your absences? Like, while you're gone, Spider-Man just happens to be here. That might be the exact conversation she ends up having with him in Far From Home. But then there's that whole thing of like, was that her acting like that because she knew like he's Spider-Man and realized all the stuff that he literally just went through and was kind of worried for him? I don't know. We'll have to wait and see in that regard. But obviously, you know, Peter feels like, oh, he's putting his friends in danger because of him being this superhero, and you know, that burden. Once again, the beauty that I love amongst Spider-Man, because he brings an element to the MCU that I feel like no other superhero really has, is trying to balance. Him being like a teenager and trying to balance a normal life with his superhero life. Like no one else, like, as everyone else's lives bled together in the MCU, but now it's like he's the one struggling to keep both of his identities balanced, you know? And that's why I've always loved Spider-Man stories, because of that. Because I think obviously the MCU's done a great job of humanizing every character, but, you know, in his particular case, him always trying to do that is always kind of the beauty of his character. Another conversation that's come up before too is everything that, you know, Mysterio does. Like, the conversation I've heard people talk about, you know, just based on the first trailer is like, is that real magic or is that fake magic? Because what he's doing is like, it almost looks like Doctor Strange level magic. Obviously it's green instead of yellow, but maybe that's just because maybe it's from a different world. So maybe he's tapping into magic from a different universe. So who knows? But you know, I'm sitting here thinking about it. I was kind of talking about that too in my Endgame discussion about how like the Ancient One was probably right about the whole situation of like, oh yeah, like there being kind of a darker path just because of everything going down. Like obviously there's consequences from doing what they did, snapping. Because not only did they snap once, they snapped twice, which Thanos technically snapped twice as well. So technically there's been 4 snaps. Well, I'd assume he snapped to destroy the Infinity Stones the first time, but still, so it's technically 4 snaps, so I guess that is enough to kind of cause ripples across all of time and space. All of existence, in fact, you know? So, but like I said, these are just my thoughts and theories. In the comments down below, let me know some of your thoughts and theories. What do you want to see from the movie? What do you expect to see? Let me know. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Till the next time, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.